Do what thou will be the whole piece of law.
Welcome back, Parroting Puppet Gangster. I see that you have tuned into your Eyesight TV today, and I want to congratulate you for that. It's nice to have you here, mainly because we're reaching the apex. I feel we're getting close to the Computer God's secret archives. Now, what makes these so special? Well, Francis had a large archive of legal documents that he wanted to get to, and specifically for what I'm searching for is the primer to a, let's say, a major breakthrough. After we got out of that place last time, I found this hallway, but not just any hallway. Well, you were technically there, but you didn't have your Brain Thoughts broadcasting radio on, so I'll give you a pass on that one. It was a grand hallway, inlaid in gold and silver, all these precious metals, lost to time, stolen from the earth by the Computer God's vicious schemes. But I had to ask myself, why are there no people here? These are obviously halls of some grandeur, and then it hit me. They're the judges' halls. They're the halls of the court, the marble accents, the Greco-Roman sculpture that was constructed by the Computer God before the beginning of time or the concept of culture even existed. You ever think about that one, Parroting Puppet? Yeah, I didn't think so. But, tuning into your Eyesight TV today, I bring to you what I was searching for, the primer on the legal documents that Francis kept stowed away. It's a letter placed on the doors of this place, like Martin Luther's 95 Theses. It's labeled, "To all judges." This one's a doozy. This one got Francis special letters addressed to him specifically by the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes, this man wrote to the United States Supreme Court. He wrote to many lesser district courts, which is what we're going to cover today. But before we break these doors open, it's important that you get the context that Francis E Dec was actually a lawyer. I know it hasn't come up very much, but I think it's indicative that what I think to be the center of the Computer God's archives is a large legal library. And when I crack open this door and I read this letter to you in the chambers of the high holy law, you'll see how massive it truly is. Oh, Parroting Puppet, before we start, I just wanted to let you know a few things. First of all, my cries for lost media have been answered, and I'm working with a small cabal of fellow Parroting Puppets who care, you may say. We're all gifted to some degree, but not the gifted that Francis E Dec talks about. A gifted in a more... I'll let you figure it out, Parroting Puppet. You're smart. The other thing that I wanted to say is, please, on your Eyesight TV, your Brain Thoughts broadcasting radio, you know what to do. There are an array of buttons laid out for you. Press them all. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend if you like it. Heck, even send it to their Eyesight TV. It's as easy as that. Isn't technology wonderful? On a small, more personal note, I wanted to address the fact that I think when I'm not remotely controlling this body through my gifted use of Frankenstein controls. No, this is not my main body. I have one that walks and talks and parrots around like you all, but this one I occasionally use when the Computer God's not looking. I think it's been getting to me, because I've gotten multiple criticisms from other puppets walking around, and they say, "You used to be so funny. What happened to the humor?" Where's the funny, Mansley? So I'm gonna try and be a little more lighthearted. I know the drudgery of everyday life can seep into whatever you produce, and I see it, Parroting Puppets. I see that it's gotten to me. So, in exchange, I'm gonna make this one a little funnier. So, stay tuned. I got a bunch of good jokes primed. Keep your Eyesight TVs set to the highest quality that they will allow. And now, as we open the doors, prepare to indulge in the writings of Francis E Dec Esquire, as he writes, "To all judges. To all judges. First and Second Appellate Division, Superior Court, New York City. Court of Appeals, Albany, New York. U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. I write demanding a rehearing of my worse than lowest deadly gangster police state criminal conviction, which appeal case was in your farce deadly gangster ghetto communist gangster Computer God manipulated gangster court. Below, I state some of the many reasons for said rehearing, plus all of my evidence that the Attorney General chicanerously forwarded to the Bar Association Grievance Committee for prosecution of the felon gangster mafionic black Frank Gulata, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable. The black in appearance and demeanor felon vicious parroting puppet ex-district attorney, Nassau County, with no private law experience, detested by all factions in spite of this, solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me. This black, mafionic, deadly Frank Gulata was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position position of solely highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. Now, Parroting Puppet, is when we begin to notice some of the black holes in our knowledge. I've been able to speculate thus far about certain things, and possibly be correct, but what I'm going to have to do now is speculate on things that I don't know, and I'm going to say yet, because that cabal I mentioned earlier, and I have some plans. I'm not going to disclose them or what the finality of that act may be, but I guarantee you I will keep you posted. Mainly because Francis E Dec's legal career is pockmarked. It is Swiss cheesed, as I may say, because it's attached to a bunch of people who were very local. None of these people really made big splashes, like Frank Gulata. He's going to take a lot of issues with Frank Gulata, and there are some things that are really quirky, like in his one famous trial that is really well documented, he, as a district attorney, Frank Gulata, will prosecute the case himself. He has like a massive jury pool of 423 jurors to narrow down into a jury pool that will eventually convict and sentence to undetectable extermination a man, I suppose. The trial is long done. I could sling a numerous amount of descriptors, but he faced capital punishment and the sentence was carried out. And Francis most definitely was aware of these things, mainly because this case that Frank Gulata is known for, the Peter Weinberger case, was prosecuted in 56. He's writing these rants in 1957. So I feel this is another case of Francis knowing all the details and making possibly the wrong conclusions, mainly because that dead link still lingers in the back of my head that Frank Gulata may have had criminal connections, but who knows? He sees this massive jury pool, he sees some of the shady things that happen at the trial, ooh, and he has a Saul Goodman moment where he's like, this chicanery, I wouldn't make such a mistake. And he makes some, there's this large protest about Frank Gulata being promoted to 2nd District Court Judge for the 2nd Division. There's so much protest and dissent, but that might just be the fallout of the Weinberger case. It's really not clear because we don't know that much about local Nassau politics, except because this one big major trial Frank Gulata's mentioned like a total of 3 times in the one article that brings up his name. I wish in these grand halls of justice there was a way for me to see all the answers to what Frank Gulata may hide, but I hope my efforts will bear fruit soon. In any case, let's continue. I know you're here for courtroom drama. You will not hunger for courtroom drama by the end of this video, Parroting Puppet. I guarantee you will not hunger for it. This is laced with drama. I feel like you could put this in an episode of a TV show and it would fit right in. Just some guy sitting. He has the qualifications to be a lawyer, just kind of tweaking on the stand. Everyone else is looking at him, giving him respect, I assume, because courts are all about respect if they don't want you appealing, which is what he's fighting them about. He has the Daryl Brooks thing going on where he is like the most disrespectful, loud person in court, allegedly. I wasn't there. And I assume, based on how the Daryl Brooks trial played out, I'm going to assume Francis E Dec is kind of just like Daryl Brooks for all of my assumptions. I feel like they're giving him as much leeway as possible to deny him appeals, because he does have the qualifications to be a lawyer, but this is related to another case, and he's pursuing an appeal for this case, and he's supposed to be like the non-invested third party, because if you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client, and he's trying to remain detached, but he's not detached at all, because he's seeing the personal connection of, these Frankenstein parroting puppet gifted judges are all conspiring to get my appeal rejected, because I don't think he feels a personal connection to his client, but he's certainly invested in his ability to be a lawyer, probably why he'll never drop the Esquire title, and he feels like it's an insult against his ability to be a lawyer. So I feel like you should take that angle when looking at this. So as you listen, keep in mind that he's defending his prestige as a lawyer, and I feel it becomes more apparent in the documents that we're going to find in this court of high holy law. But listen and see for yourself if you agree. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long worse-than-a-farce fascist court criminal trial in Nassau County Court 1958, where dwarfed felon, gangster, parroting puppet, sodomist, Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon, promiscuous wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her organs to the court. She repeatedly gesticulated and whispered, "I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him." Her husband, dwarfed felon, gangster, parroting puppet, sodomist, Judge William Sullivan, flush-faced in repeated open sodomistic displays, stuck out his tongue, wiggling it, chuckling to her. You, hangman, rope, gangster, felon, parroting puppet, scum on top playboys, can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious, lowly, sodomistic display by the felon sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly, felon, promiscuous wife during my trial in Nassau County Court. After my worse than fascist court criminal conviction, crucifixion for years in poverty, I suffered hopeless, jobless character assassination and isolation in this low, deadly town. I was the repeat target victim of the gangster government's gangsterization and undetectable extermination attempts to shut me up forever with my secrets. Francis is a lot more explicit in his writing, and I'm upset that I'm not able to fully transcribe it for you. It seems that the computer god is hard at work to censor my reading of the true literature. Anyway, as for William Sullivan, I can find almost absolutely nothing except for one New York Times article about, hey, you got sworn in, yippee! He was so plain, so particular, so, I don't want to say mediocre, so ordinary, that is all that he had in his entire term. He doesn't even have, like, any other known pages. His only way of being preserved is Francis E Dec. Francis E Dec mentions him more than the entire internet does. And something that Francis is introducing here is, first of all, the word gesticulating. I hope you like that word. Second of all is bribery in explicit favors, I guess is the best way to say it. And something else that I feel kind of conflicts with his narrative. I know I said he's relatively consistent, but I still have yet to figure out how this is consistent. He repeatedly states that he has no Frankenstein controls, but it seems that in this rant he explicitly states that he does, because he references, hey, you can just watch my eyesight TV playback and see that this entire thing actually did happen. Just read my mind. You can do it, right? You are gifted with all the Frankenstein controls. You can see that all that I said actually happened. And I just feel like that's impossible, because, you know, you'd have to be reading from his eyes. You'd have to be effectively reading his brain. Possibly at some point he gets implanted with controls, but I feel like that would be more documented. I feel like that would also explain why, thank you, parroting puppet who cares, pointed this out to me, said that Francis is so scared of the inevitability of gradualness because he's not supposed to be affected by it. He's experiencing something that he thought he was immune to, and that's why it's so frightening. But it would also explain why he is afflicted with the inevitability of gradualness. If he was at some point implanted with Frankenstein controls and now he's mentioning it, you can watch my eyesight TV playback, I'm being affected by the inevitability of gradualness. And he then says, oh, after my conviction, like, I was put on trial in front of everyone, and everyone saw that it was a total farce. I was just executed in front of everyone, and I have to spend years in poverty and suffer hopeless, jobless character assassination in this lowly town. He's a lot more explicit. And he's like, shut me up forever with my secrets. And I still think it's crazy that he's, first of all, allowed in a courtroom to begin with. Imagine you're saying, like, oh man, you can just watch, you don't need to record the courtroom, I just got it on my eyesight TV, you can just read my mind later and we can get the entire thing recorded. Imagine how insane that is if someone walked up to the stand and it's like the honorable judge presiding, and you know, the DA walks up, the disaddy walks up and says, well, nice to be here, Your Honor. And then Francis E. Dec walks up and he says, you can watch my eyesight TV playback and watch this entire gangster court. Your bribes do not slip by me, judge. On a more personal note, I've interacted with district attorneys like a handful of times, and I don't know if it's just me or where I live. I mean, I share a state with Francis E. Dec, not a county, but I share a state, so I don't know if it's a type here in the States, but, well, here in the state, the grand old state of New York, I don't know if it's a pattern, but the disaddies here are really mean. Not mean as in, like, they bully you, like Francis E. Dec says, but, like, I don't know if it's just like a lawyer thing, you know, what do you call 29 lawyers up to their necks in cement? Oh, not enough cement. I don't know if that's just the lawyer stereotype, that they're all like slimy and they know these esoteric knowledge books that you'll never comprehend in your entire life. It's why people specialize in various parts of law, because Francis E Dec is right. You're not supposed to memorize all the laws. You don't know how they all apply to you. They use all these fancy terms like, oh, you're facing a speeding ticket, but actually we can get you to plead down to a 1210A. And then you're like, oh, what's a 1210A? And they're like, actually, it's just a parking ticket. Pay us $50. Like, it's esoteric knowledge that I feel is purposefully obscured. I'm kind of on Francis's side on this one, but also he's a lawyer specializing in something. I know he gets more explicit. I think it's insurance claims. But don't quote me on that, Parroting Puppet. You have to stay tuned for confirmation. Not in this one, but sometime down the road, once I have time to go through all of these law books. I mean, look, it's all the way up to the ceiling. How do you expect me to go through it once I just opened the door? District attorneys and lawyers as a whole are just really slimy. They're one of my least favorite people to interact with on the planet. And I don't say that because I hate lawyers, because someone in my family is trained to be a lawyer. I just say that because it's the stereotype, and I see it. I've been to court like a handful of times, not for anything big, and it's just the same every time. You expect it to change. You expect them to have like a little bit of leniency with common people. No, they will eat you alive if they are ready, but they're always prepared, is what I'm trying to get at. It's a profession for a reason. It's not kind to the layman. It's like if the layman were to get into rocket science. They're not going to try and prep you on rocket science. Anyway, I'm creating my own to all judges rant. The district attorney, it's gotten to me. I was thinking about it when I was there. I was thinking. Anyway, he's gonna go on about something that I mentioned in the biography video. If you're here, I assume you're here from the biography video. He's gonna take this plane flight, and we're gonna hear what it is from his perspective. And I've been cautiously awaiting to go over this because it's another one of those nice golden Francis E Dec moments that you can drop in conversation, and it's amazing. Hold on. I'll just read it out to you and you can hear. Then, in December 14th through 17th, 1965, I attempted to escape this worse mongrel gangster communist country to return to the Slovenic Polish land of my forefathers. Instead, in a gangster staged parroting puppet deadly conspiracy, I was flown from Kennedy, New York airport at night to a small distant St. Lawrence River estuary, snowbound small airport, under the guise that I was in Warsaw, Poland. Immediately, many things proved this to me, including the two big white asbestos shingled hangers on their sidewalls, in addition to the many blurted statements I solicited from the many CIA deadly gangsters, the assassins of me, the many parroting puppets all around me. I demanded an immediate flight back to Kennedy, New York airport. Instead, I was held captive all night, later in chains. I refused both all food and requests. I'd go to sleep. Then the CIA police gangsters pretending to be Polish police with no identification beat me bloodily. Holy mother of miseries, Batman. It is the two big white asbestos shingled hangers with the large Benriff Airways signs on their sidewalls, in addition to the many blurted statements I solicited from the many CIA deadly gangsters, the assassins of me. That's how it's supposed to go, but I like the original reading more, and I feel it would be disingenuous if I went back and did it. So please forgive me for not putting it directly through the antenna loop. I hope it's not too much of a turnoff for you. So let's lay out what happened. First of all, I want to point out the comedy of, in 1965, by the way, this happens in 1965, December 14th through 17th, I attempted to escape this worse mongrel gangster communist country to return to the Slovenic Polish land of my forefathers. First of all, Poland, Slovenia, and all of those countries are behind the Iron Curtain. Second of all, calling the United States a gangster communist country in 1965, being the most anti-communist country on the planet, in fact engaging in a Cold War to annihilate communism off the face of the planet with a policy called containment, or, you know, there's more brutal proposed ones like rollback. He's gonna say, I'm gonna escape communism and I'm gonna go to Poland behind the Iron Curtain. He's a genius. but I don't know if it's a mix-up. I don't know if it's an actual conspiracy, but he had a flight to a small St. Lawrence River Estuary airport, which was completely bound in snow. And this airport is super small. I want to emphasize it has only like one runway. Second of all, whether it is him believing he's truly in Poland or people gaslighting him to believing he's in Poland, he believes that he is in Poland. And this is going to set the stage for the betrayal, quote unquote, because he notices all these things that are off. It's the Braniff Airways signs because Braniff Airways doesn't fly to Poland. And he questions all these CIA agents and they don't want to blow their cover, so they're giving him these tiny statements because they don't want to feel guilty when they line him up for undetectable extermination. And he says, fly me back to New York because I want to go back to the communist nation that I was claiming to flee in the first place. And then they held me captive in prison and then beat me bloodily. I feel like this is the Artaud syndrome again. I feel like this is, hints of other people that we can look at and say concretely that this is something that happened to them and link it to Francis. Because the people just spontaneously attack me even when they don't have good reason to is, I want to say, a good indicator that he had a altered perception of reality. I mean, despite the fact that he made an entire, I don't want to say living, but he made a career because he was not making money during the 20 years that he was in isolation and suffering jobless character assassination as he is putting out himself. He's not making money. He's writing these rants as like a career. It's just something to do, I guess. He wants to let the world know because this conspiracy is covering up the truth and they have to stop him and beat him and do all these horrible things to him. Lay him in chains, and they're gonna, in fact, lay out more horrible things, so I'm not even gonna bother listing them out, because it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. It's gonna get worse. So, how does it get worse? Let me read from the manuscript. I wanted to record an addenda. So what I said about the flight is mostly true. That questioning is still there, but I want to add something because the Cabal brought it to my attention and I feel that it's valuable. There actually is some evidence that Francis did actually make it to Poland, or that he might have listed a bunch of different European countries on a list so it didn't just look like he's trying to go from the United States to the communist bloc, and that's why the CIA is involved. But the theory that he went to Poland and this is just him being arrested by Polish authorities and taken back is more valid than just, oh, it's speculation. It might have actually just not happened. There's actually a lot of evidence that I can't show right now. Once again, my hands are tied with the curse of knowledge. But source, Eyesight TV. So you're just gonna have to believe me, I guess. I'm just adding that because it happened in a discussion after I recorded this video. So I'm just adding this right now to clear that up. Okay, back to the earphone radio playback. Later, while my return trip 707 Boeing jet airliner was being serviced for my return trip, I quickly walked into the airplane and saw a CIA gangster with a small electric hairdryer type blower pumping deadly poison nerve gas smoke into the secret components under the ashtrays in the arms of the chairs, where later I was ordered to sit. The airplane full of CIA underlings, quote-unquote passengers, my assassins, who giggled as they dragged me in chains into the airplane by the gangster CIA police gangsters. These deadly gangster CIA passengers. They pressed the frontal panel of the ashtrays in the seat arms to release the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Indubitably, all of the other deadly CIA underling gangsters upon this staged return flight, they all had taken the top secret poison nerve gas antidote pill, immuning them from the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Deadly poison nerve gas smoke was sprayed at me from cigars, cigarettes, even ballpoint pens, even from the wig of a woman sitting next to me. Even the Swiss cheese type ice cubes were evaporating into the poison nerve gas smoke in all of the free drinks. I got up and went to the rear of the airplane by the rear exit door with the large push-up handle. My Frankenstein brain thoughts broadcasting radio disclosed my intentions immediately. The loudspeaker screamed that the flight was over and that our airplane was preparing to land at Kennedy, New York Airport. You hangman rope sneak gangster playboy scum on top know these facts are true, not only from taking part in such undetectable exterminations, but also you chicanerous, demented, felon parroting puppet gangsters can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of all of these horrible, deadly, terrifying events. When I returned home, Joseph E Dec, my only brother, and deadly felon murderer and assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, he beat me repeatedly me, cursing me that I was not exterminated by all of the poison nerve gas smoke, and that I did the impossible, and that I kept awake for 3 days and refused all food in order to prevent my sneak extermination. I know that was long. I apologize. But I just had to get it out. It's such a good piece of Francis E Dec media. If you had to tell someone one clip, that would be in like the top 3, because it's so Francis. It's so Francis, you know, it's so Raven, it's so Francis. Because he says, oh, they're rigging the plane with all this nerve gas smoke and all these CIA agents are dragging me while I'm helpless because, you know, helpless and hopeless, in chains into the airplane, where they're probably just, you know, escorting him because he's insane. You know, they usually accompany crazy people on planes and they, you know, flash the badge. If you ever talk to them on accident, and they're like, oh, actually, this man is going to prison or, like, going to be exterminated across the country, so, please don't talk to them. I feel like that's the more likely scenario. Also, there's one of the Cabal members posed to me whether Francis had hallucinations, and I feel this is like the prime, I would point to it as a prime example, because think about it. If you have claustrophobia, that's stress, or just Francis being in this stressful scenario already, you know, he thinks he's in Poland, but all these CIA gangsters are trying to surround him and pack him back onto a plane, and then they can't just give him a normal return flight, they have to rig it so that he's going to be exterminated on the way back. I feel like this is a really good example, because he's under all this stress, and just stress alone can cause hallucinations. And Francis is under stress, and also a paranoid schizophrenic. So those two things, you know, mesh together like Voltron. All these things come together and they turn into this evil concoction that you have to deal with. And he says, oh, there's all this poison nerve gas smoke and all these people are immune to it, and there's people smoking on the plane, it's ruining the air quality, this woman smells bad, it's coming out of all these noxious smells, and poisons are coming out of everywhere, and I have to hold my breath. Like, even the Swiss cheese ice cubes that contain all this poison nerve gas smoke are leaking out because it's all a plot. And when he notices it's a plot, he like runs to the back of the airplane and he's like, oh, I can finally get away. And they read his mind. He's like, oh, they're reading my mind because they know the second that I get up to go to the bathroom is the time that they're finally gonna decide to land, like the stupid American Airlines communist puppet airline. He doubles down again on like the, oh, you people can read my mind and you can just look back into the eyesight TVs and see that all this stuff that I've said is true, even though it would behoove you to not do such a thing because you need to exterminate me because I'm the only one exposing this worldwide global conspiracy and no one is listening to me. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine how crazy that guy sounds if you're trying to... I sound crazy trying to explain it to you. And there's like the twinge of sadness that's attached to it, because when he gets home, like the only person that he can trust and is like housing him during this time, he's like, oh, he beat me and he cursed me for not succumbing to the poison nerve gas smoke, and I stayed awake for 3 days because then they couldn't get to me in my sleep. I feel bad for Joe Dec. He retired, well, he passed away in 2010, so I'll never know how he was, but in the limited media we have about Joseph Dec, he seemed like he really did care for his brother. I feel like Francis's interpretation of him is just completely wrong, mainly because he uses an endearing term like brother and then attaches like 7 different pejoratives to it. He's like, oh, my only brother and deadly felon murderer and assassin spy against me for the gangster government. I feel like there's that little bit of betrayed love in there that makes it just so much worse. And the fact that he's like bragging, I stayed awake for 3 days so they couldn't get to me and I refused all food because they poisoned it with the poison nerve gas smoke ice cubes. It's just that little twinge of sadness that you can't be like, haha, it's a crazy guy. You know, you point at like Terry A. Davis and you're like, haha, it's a crazy guy. Actually, no, Terry A. Davis is also kind of equally sad. You look... Well, Artaud is sad too. Well, someone, you know, you look at a crazy crackhead on 7-Eleven when he's like high on crack or something, and you're like, haha, he's crazy. And you don't think about the fact that he's, you know, suffering from a horrible, crippling addiction. But Francis didn't have any addictions. It's just that he's a parroting puppet gangster slave to himself. The computer god is his own head, if that... Man. Anyway, he has to comply with the law because he is a lawyer. So, reading from the manuscript, here's what he says. Okay, second small addenda. Happened on the same day, basically same conversation. I wanted to add another thing about Joseph Dec. I'm giving him probably way too much credit, if I'm being honest. Joseph Dec is a lot more of a darker character than I've given him credit for, especially based on the Eastern European values and the way he talks about Francis in some of the communiques with other people. Francis may be closer to the truth than I gave him credit for, especially because going with the theme of Francis is generally correct and he just makes the wrong connections. He can see everything just fine, but he can't explain why. It would make sense that he's being honest about his brother abusing him rather than he's just making it up from whole cloth. So makes me feel a little worse for Francis E Dec. Doesn't really change my opinion of Joseph Dec, though. I mean, my grandmother had Alzheimer's. I know Alzheimer's and paranoid schizophrenia are not the same thing, but I can understand how it gets frustrating. I would never go to the point of, like, you know, what Joseph may or may not have done to his brother, but I understand where Joseph's coming from. With that very small addenda in mind, let's get back to it. Resuming from radio play. In accordance with the completely gangster computer god concocted and manipulated statutory laws, one of your computer court's requisite duties is to automatically rehear my said appeal case because it has been brought to your attention, you hangman rope gangsters, that my entire life was destroyed by you co-conspirators through the gangster government's perjured and fabricated criminal conviction of me in order to fulfill the demands of your communist god, the worldwide mad, deadly gangster computer god. You deadly parroting puppet felon gangsters already know that I have been and am an innocent primary victim and target for destruction and extermination because I am a menace to your computer god and that I am worse than defenseless without the gangster protection and control of the gangster Frankenstein earphone radio. I stand alone against you demented, deadly gangster parroting puppets, namely this worst gangster communist computer god, controlled by the gangster government. Before I am exterminated by you hangman rope underlings, I demand a reply. October 21st, 1976, Francis E. Dec, Esquire. Wait, parroting puppet, I figured it out. I've been misinterpreting it the whole time. It is consistent. I know he's masochistically consistent. Because when he said, I don't have the Frankenstein earphone radio, that's what controls people. It's the device that controls you and broadcasts the computer god's control to your brain. Francis has all the other controls because remember, he can slightly hear it when he stops. You know, quiet and motionless, I can slightly hear it repeatedly. It saved my life on the streets. He has all of the, how he mentioned earlier, how it broadcasts his brain thoughts so the CIA can get to the back of the plane and land before that he can escape. He has all of the things that broadcast his actions. He has the eyesight TV, which allows you to see what he's seeing, but he can't be controlled by the computer god. So he's somewhat in the conspiracy and he's just like an informant trying to get out all of the information before the computer god realizes this hole by him not having the Frankenstein earphone radio. It makes so much sense. Oh, I'm gonna have to do so many addendums to this. When I put this all together from my eyesight TV recordings, I'm going to have to, so many addendums are gonna have to be made. But we can't stop now, parroting puppet. Now, it's that thing of, I feel like Francis E. Dec is having another one of those Charles McGill moments where he's like, I would never make such a mistake. It's being automatically reheared my appeals case because it's been brought to your attention, you hangman rope gangsters. He defecated through a sunroof. He's like, my entire life has been destroyed. I couldn't have been schizophrenic. I am not crazy. He's having the, I am not crazy. And he gets to be a lawyer? What a sick joke. He's having the Charles McGill mount. This is Charles McGill after he like loses his mind and he starts like wearing solar blankets everywhere because it's like a mental disorder that he has and it's not a physical one. That I like to imagine just Francis E. Dec is pre like Saul Goodman trial, post solar blanket era where he's like remodeling his entire house to get all the electricity out of it. I like to imagine that's the Francis E. Dec before he like gets a stroke and goes into the hospital because that's like the, oh, I burned my house down, it's all over type moment. But he's locked inside of his own mind. He's making mistakes that he shouldn't make as a lawyer because he sees everything as it is, but he makes these connections that are all wrong because it's not, oh, I was missing these key important things and the prosecution district attorney were filing against me to, you know, because it's effectively a duel between lawyers. It's not, oh, I'm losing the duel of lawyers. It's, I'm losing the duel of lawyers because my hands are tied behind my back while you people punch and kick at me and keep me in chains and try and poison me with deadly nerve gas smoke. He repeatedly professes his innocence and he says, it's because I'm a menace to your computer god. And once again restates that I'm worse than defenseless because he doesn't have the one that controls tells him he has the ones that broadcast that makes so much more sense. So, oh, wait. I thought this was the end. There's an addendum here. Well, let me see what the addendum says, and we'll see if we can dig a little more into what this appeal may have contained. Addendum. I personally filed my maximum conviction appeal brief in 1961 with the chief clerk in the U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. The chief clerk, he knew me. He sneeringly grabbed my thick, strong, homemade appeal brief, and he attempted to rip it up. In desperation, the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court ripped off the cover of my appeal brief. Miraculously, I stopped him without a deadly scene to me. Then, filing my ripped appeal brief, the felon, another co-conspirator with the 9 hangman rope gangster judges, the chief clerk, in cowardly fear, in staccato speech and gesticulation, he confessed to me, Mr. Dec, everyone is in on this one against you, even the Attorney General, namely Bobby Kennedy, younger than his very young brother Jack Kennedy, Kennedy then president, the Kennedy Playboys, little gay Bobby was a felon, lowest, chicanerous, untouchable, parroting puppet gangster against the worse than defenseless Mr. Francis E Dec Esquire. You know, I get the feeling that Francis was ahead of the Kennedy craze, mainly because he wants to assign a lot of things to the Kennedys, and he has the entire Chappaquiddick thing with Ted Kennedy, the Ted Kennedy letter, and I like the unintentional, I like to think it's unintentional, use of framing by Francis E. Dec. He's walking into this lawyer's office, everything is sanitized, there's nice filing cabinets everywhere, diplomas on the back wall, and he's bringing in this nice appeal brief. I also, by the way, I forgot to say it, I also like how he's like, he grabbed me by my nice homemade shirt that was so sturdy and made of all natural material. He likes to add his own little, he likes to boost himself while degrading his enemies, and I appreciate that, because he says, I have my nice homemade appeal brief, and then the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court ripped off the cover and he tried to destroy it before he could even get to it, because he knew Francis E. Dec and he knew what stupid nonsense he was going to try and do, and he didn't want to show him the respect that he deserved as a lawyer. And then he filed the appeal brief anyway, after it had been ripped. I like to think that it was like his mistake, but he, connecting the dots in the wrong way, it has to be the conspiracy, or like, or the chief clerk made a mistake and, like, ripped it on a filing cabinet or something. Making all the wrong connections, but he has, like, a concrete understanding of what's going on. And he says, like, oh, everyone's against you on this one, because I feel the next Francis E. Dec video is going to be massive. It's going to be me going into a rant and then in all of the legal work the best I can. Because I guarantee you there's something in this giant, high, holy law court here. And he specifically says, oh, Bobby Kennedy's going after me. Well, luckily Bobby Kennedy won't be going after him for very long, because if you write this in 1976, he's got like, what, 9 years of Bobby Kennedy persecution, if I'm remembering the date correctly. I'm probably not. Put the right date up on screen. Anyway, let's finish up the addendum. And so there's a footnote too. A footnote and addendum. How unprofessional. Just put it all into one thing. After we finish that, we'll wind it up. And then I can give you a little taste of what's to come. So let me finish the manuscript like so. My quick questioning and the then co-conspiring felon chief clerk explained and gave me a new and quote-unquote special notice form for the only Mr. Francis E. Dec Esquire, which had to be mailed to the opposition, the deadly gangster district attorney, in order to prevent the dismissal of my appeal case. Leaving quickly, I noticed in the room and hall several approaching uniformed and plainclothes beweaponed police. Later, Joseph I. Dec, my only brother, deadly villain, murderer, and secret assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, cursed me, stating that I tricked the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court and that I got out of that death trap fast. So, brainwashed from birth by the computer god threshold brainwashed radio parroting puppet gangster slave, if you believe in anything, forget kneeling to abide by the high holy law long enough for me to say one word of pray for me, your only hope for a future. Footnote, remember, it is gangster U.S. Supreme Court written high holy law. I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him! So, the end of this addendum mentions something very important. Remember when I said that the co-conspiring felon chief clerk explained and gave me a new and special notice for only Francis E. Dec Esquire, aka solely for Mr. Dec? That is actually something that is kind of disturbingly created just for him, because an important piece of context that was brought to my attention by the cabal that I have joined earlier was that Francis was sending these rants to like a bunch of people. Remember, this is like his full-time job, and these letters that he has to mail to the opposition, it's not that, oh, he's given me this fabricated statement that I have to send to the opposition. It's that when he sends these, they were specifically created to accommodate him as a court device, because he would send all of these things to like everyone involved. He's basically doing the equivalent of like CCing everyone in the entire workplace when he's sending these things out. And when he sends these, they just, you know, funnel them to the right people so that he can have these accommodations for legal trials. And hopefully, I'm going to say hopefully, in the archives here, we will find a more sarcastic use of the term solely for Mr. Dec, but that is a little too in the shadows for me as of this moment. As for what is in front of us, he's then supposed to be intercepted by a bunch of police officers who are, I assume, going to chain him and take him to a mental asylum again and beat him bloodily along with his brother. My only brother, deadly villain, murderer, secret assassin, spy agent against me for this gangster government cursed me. Oh yeah, he's my only brother, but also he's like this spy assassin for the gangster government. And that he's so smart because he tricked the chief clerk to get out early before the police could come and intercept him. And then it's the, you know, the classic very sad, oh, you're brainwashed from birth by the computer god threshold brainwash radio, Frankenstein earphone radio that allows you to be controlled. If you believe in anything, please disregard the law for 1 second, you know, because the high holy law is by order to persecute him. Issue 1 word of pray for me, your only hope for a future. And then reiterating the bribes that his judges receive as per high holy law, and he implies that the reason why his appeal was, spoiler alert, rejected from the Supreme Court, what a surprise, is because that it's written in high holy law that you get these explicit rewards if you conform to the oppression of Francis E Dec. And at the bottom of it all, I feel like that's what it is. The gangster computer god, however many more adjectives you want to assign to it, parroting puppet, is an oppression complex. It's that, you know, our toe syndrome of constantly feel like people are attacking you, even if unconsciously. Because even if you exist near him, it's the Frankenstein earphone radio that allows people to listen in on your thoughts and control you. Not even by thinking. It just happens. It's not something you can control. It's something that the computer god does because you're in its informational web. And I think that's the horror of it all, if you want to see Francis E. Dec as horrifying rather than, you know, schizophrenic. If you take this as truth to any degree, it's a little horrifying how much they're just dedicated to screwing over one guy. And this isn't even how deep the rabbit hole goes. I mean, look at these archives. High holy law stacked to the ceiling. And I bet it's not even all law books. I bet in this madness somewhere is long lost archival data. Probably in a secret room somewhere. But I almost guarantee this has what I'm looking for, and I guarantee the legal archives are going to be a monster. I am by no means a lawyer. I am worse than defenseless when it comes to law in general, especially the way the Disatti mocked me. But anyway. Oh, parroting puppet. I just want to thank you for watching. I know very little people make it this far, and I'm proud if you did. This is just your second reminder to press all those buttons on your eyesight TV. Like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. You know what to do. I won't patronize you. But if you enjoy the world of Francis E. Dec, I would gesticulate with anticipation when it comes to the next entry in this saga. After all, we have access to the entire courtroom of high holy law. Oh, it will be wonderful. Stay tuned. I post videos every week, and hopefully that won't change. Thank you for listening, parroting puppet. Just let me switch your eyesight TV to outro.